What's going on, everyone? I'm just a typical, average American here today to react and learn about what happened to the old English flag. Now, to be completely honest, most Americans don't even know that England has its own flag. Seriously, most Americans, when we picture a flag, it's the British flag or the Union Jack. Now, I have since learned that England has its own dedicated flag, but I certainly didn't know that England also had an old flag. So today, I guess you could say I'm kind of catching up on my English history here, learning about this old version of the English flag I didn't even know existed, and why exactly it got replaced by the current English flag. Hopefully, all of that makes some kind of sense, and we're going to do that by checking out this video by History with Hilbert. So, let's take a look.
This is the flag of England and Genoa and Padua and Bologna, and
What?
it's the flag of a lot of places. It's called the St. George's Cross, and it's named after this legendary figure who was probably a Roman general who killed a dragon.
Oh my, that woke me up. Really? This is like a famous symbol, St. George's Cross? This is not unique to just England. There's other countries that have this cross as their flag. I had no idea about that.
And became a saint. But in this video, I want to look at its particular association with England, as
Yeah.
well as some other English flags, because there's also this other flag that you can see on the left that was used during the Middle Ages in England.
What is this? During the Middle Ages? Man, this is cool. I mean, this is the kind of stuff we really just aren't taught here in America during our little history classes. This is the detail we don't get. So, what is the meaning behind this flag? Well, I'm sure we're going to learn all about that.
And where did actually this St. George's flag come from? And what was the history
Yeah.
behind this other flag? And why is it not used as the quote-unquote national flag of England today?
What? Just appreciating this for a second before they tell me everything. I've seen the symbol that kind of looks like, I don't know. I've always thought this symbol looks like a banana being peeled. I hope that's not disrespectful. I'm not sure what that symbol means. And there's also lions. Lions that are really getting a good stretch in. What does this all mean?
Okay, so let's first take a look at the three lions. And the first time we see this is in the reign of Richard I, who came to the throne
Okay.
in 1189. So the end
1189. Oh my god. You know, living in America, sometimes I forget just how old most other countries actually are. Like, especially Britain and England. This is like almost 1,000 years ago. Stuff was happening. That's really cool. You could even say it's something that I think certainly myself and Americans are a little jealous of. Like, our history in America is not that long for the United States. But England had all this stuff going on like 1,000 years ago. That's crazy.
of the 12th century. And it's actually in 1198, a year before his death, that in the second seal that we see that he is using a lion there. And this is the first time we see an English king doing this. Now, his father
Okay.
was Henry II, who was actually the first Plantagenet king of England, and they would rule right up until the death of Richard I.
Plantagenet? Are we supposed to know what that means? Plantagenet? I feel like I'm back in school and I'm failing. It's like those nightmares that you have sometimes. Like you're supposed to know what Plantagenet means. Well, apparently, a very old English king, Richard I, was the first to put like the lion on the English flag. They didn't really say why, other than it's cool. It's a cool, powerful symbol. And I think maybe it's as simple as that.
the third in 1485. But essentially, the Plantagenets were descended from a different family, but before that, it had been Norman kings in England, and it's quite possible that the Normans had some sort of lion on their banner as well.
Okay.
Of course, a lion is now also associated with Normandy in their heraldry, and possibly actually this went back way further to some of the Danish kings in the 10th century who might have had some kind of lion banner as well. But we're not entirely sure, and none of them have survived to us today, although
I wouldn't be surprised if back in the day, a lot of different places had lions on their banners and flags. That's just a universally cool, badass symbol. I think that means strength. So it's kind of hard to beat that.
though some of the Germanic tribes were using lions as part of their symbols. This was obviously before heraldry was a major thing. Now, this was because during Richard I's reign, there are 3 lions because he was King of England as well as Duke of Aquitaine, so in the southwest of France, and also the Duke of Normandy. And if you want to find more out about the Duchy of Normandy and its Viking roots, then you can do that here. So that explains the lions. But for the rest of this heraldic flag, as what we can call it, of England, then we need to go back to 1340. And this is a very important year because this...
Oh my god. This is seriously like a history lesson, and it's actually really fun for me. Jumping all over the place, now we're in the 1300s with Edward III, trying to figure out the other part of the old English flag.
Is when Edward III was reigning, and he declared war on the French and declared himself the King of France. And of course, this kick-started the 100 Years' War, which I've talked about before on this channel, which lasted longer than 100 years and was probably several wars. But the crux of it was that the English kings were also claiming the throne of France. And this is where we see various...
I've heard of the 100 Years' War. I'm even pretty sure we were taught about it to some extent in America. We are taught some things here in America about world history, British history. 100 Years' War sounds familiar, but for the life of me, I didn't remember what it was all about. But it's apparently England trying to take over France, which has to do with this symbol, I guess.
Heraldic symbols being used on both sides in this depiction of the 100 Years' War. And essentially one of them, the one that the French are wearing, is called the Fleur de Lys. And I've talked about this in this video, for example, if you want to know more about the Fleur de Lys. But essentially, because they claim to be the kings of France as well, they also took the French royal symbol, the Fleur de Lys, these flowers, and put them on, quartered them with the 3 lions that had...
This is a French symbol, Fleur de Lys. I'm sure I'm not pronouncing that right. This is supposed to be a flower? I've seen this symbol before. I never knew what it was or where it came from. This is on other stuff, I think. This is basically a French symbol that England just took and put on the flag. History is so fascinating when you just sit down and just learn for a moment.
come to stand for the English realms as well. And actually, when the French House of Capet, when they became extinct, that actually starts off the 100 Years' War, but when they switch in France from having lots and lots of the Fleur de Lys on a blue background to just having 3, the English keep up and they also switch up their flag to then match this as well. But what about the St. George's flag? What about this nice red cross on a white background?
Yes, okay. So they've done a good job of explaining sort of this old flag of England and where it came from. And at somewhere along the line, it became this, which is called a St. George's Cross, I think they're saying, which is apparently a very well-known, recognized symbol already that England just straight up adopted as the flag of England.
Where does this come into play? Well, actually, this comes into play during the reign of Edward I. And it's during the Second Barons' War, when several of the barons, led by Simon de Montfort, were rebelling against him, that...
I'm just chuckling, because it's like, there's so much British history, so much English history. There's so many wars, there's so many kings, how do you learn it all? Like, oh my God, in America, we have to learn American history, and that's hard. But God, if you grow up in England or just Britain, learning all of this history must be so hard.
In battle in 1265, the Battle of Evesham, the royalist troops were wearing red crosses to differentiate themselves from the enemy, who apparently wore white crosses. Now, it's possible this is a
Okay.
very similar story to one that we get from the Crusade with Richard the Lionheart, who I mentioned earlier, but then it's mentioned very explicitly that the English were wearing white crosses, whereas the French soldiers were wearing red crosses. Although it's
Okay.
true that the cross of St. George became a very popular symbol. St. George was a popular saint, he was a warrior saint, of course, and so he
Oh.
became popular during the Crusades as well, and it's possible that they took this back home to England, which is what we see happening at the Battle of Evesham.
So around this time period, this symbol, which was a saint, having to do with war, became popular because people are at war. That makes sense, and it's interesting because a lot of this symbolism is stuff that England seemed to adopt from other cultures and other people and assimilate into the English culture along the way, which is really fascinating.
Now, another saint that was very popular as well as George was actually Edward. Now, Edward had also been
Okay.
the King of England, except he's Edward the -2 because Edward the First is actually the third or fourth of the Edwards to come to the throne, but they actually only start counting the
Oh my
kings when the
God.
Normans come in. So this Edward
Oh
was
my
also
God.
known more commonly today as Edward the Confessor, and he was an Anglo-Saxon king. Now, I actually talked about him in this video if you're interested in
Okay.
learning more about exactly what he did, but for the rest, he's
Okay.
not particularly related to this video because he died in 1066, so this is long before many of the events we're talking about in this video.
Oh my goodness. Is everyone keeping up here? Is it just me who's struggling a little bit? I mean, I think I'm keeping up, I think, but we're just the more names and Edwards and Henrys and Crusades and Saints that we throw in here. I mean, I don't know. It's complicated, but I feel like this is kind of an overdue history lesson for me.
Video, but in 1161 he was made a saint, so that's why he was called, Saint Edward. And this is the
Okay.
Saint Edward that's being referred to a lot of the time. Now it's possible that this was because he had been celibate, and of course this kind of messed England up with the whole 1066 situation. But his flag essentially looked something like this, his standard with these birds, and we only get
Okay.
much later depiction of this. However, we do see this on some of Edward the Confessor's coinage, with the 4 birds being on the right there. So possibly this was a much older symbol that had been associated with King Edward for a long time, and this then found its way onto later medieval banners as well. Now,
I mean, this symbol. This is a cross. Does this have anything to do with the English flag cross, or what is the relevance of Edward the Confessor to this story? I guess that's what I'm wondering.
Now, he was especially revered by King Henry III. And we know this because in 1239, the reason that he called his eldest son Edward was because of this Edward. And yes, this Edward I
Okay.
is also the same Edward I who put the... yeah. Anyway, there's another saint who was called St. Edmund, and he is another Anglo-Saxon. He's also known as Edmund the Martyr, and he became canonized upon his death, and this was because he died at the hands of the Danes during the Great Heathen Army. He was king of East Anglia, and he was
Okay.
shot full of arrows.
Okay.
And therefore he became a saint because he died as a martyr at the hands of pagans. And basically, one of those who killed him was called a certain Ubba. Now, Ubba
Ubba killed this saint. I'm a little lost for where this is all leading up to why the English flag looks like the English flag. This is all leading up to that. Okay, fair enough. I'm gonna keep at it.
is also known as the Dux Frisonum in Latin, and he was probably from or used his base on the island of Walcheren, which hold on a minute, where is that today? That was most associated with this St. Edmund were these three crowns, again often on a blue background. So for a lot of the Middle Ages, you had lots of different standards that were being used. Of course, this is before the great age of the nation state, and so the whole kind of idea that England should have a flag or anywhere has one particular flag wasn't in vogue yet. So they had
Oh, okay. So they're kind of teaching about the evolution of English symbols. Before there was a set national flag, there were these different standards and designs that went on flags and shields, including the one that will become the English flag. But you also had these other symbols as well. This is what I'm talking about, how like England and Britain in general have such a long, interesting history.
lots of different flags, loads of different banners, and these were just some of the more famous saints who had their own flags.
Yeah.
That is until 1346, when Edward III, who again I've already mentioned, he's the one that sort of kicks off the 100 Years' War against the French. It's when he, during the Battle of Crécy against the French, we can see the fleur-de-lis being used there as well, when they're fighting against each other, he actually has a divine intervention. He says, he gets this vision, and it's of St. George, and George helps him win the battle. So the legend goes, and that's why he then honours him by being particularly venerated during his reign and by using his symbol a lot.
Like, seriously, the flag of England might actually be how it is. Because this guy, this leader, was it Edward III, had a vision of this symbol, which gave him strength in this battle. That's actually like a big reason why this cross is used in England to this day. That's the kind of like interesting little tidbit fact that I really love. Like, that's interesting. Just crazy random stuff like that determines a lot of history.
Now we can see here as well, during the Peasants' Revolt, this is Wat Tyler leading the peasants forward, that they're using both the kind of royal banner with the fleur-de-lis and with the three lions, as well as St. George's flag that's there. And this one, for example, is a Tudor ship that was released during the reign of Henry VIII, and you can see there that St. George's banner is very popular.
Yeah.
Now this is the situation that kind of continues up until the English Reformation.
Okay.
And during this time, we get in 1552 the release of a new prayer book, the Common Book of Prayer. This is during the reign of Edward VI, by the way. If you're interested, I talk about it more in this video.
Oh my gosh.
And this is when they mandate that St. George's flag is the only saint's symbol or saint's flag that is allowed to be used. Because
this was in the 1500s, 500 years ago, where it seemed to be set, the standard was set, that this was the only saint symbol or flag that you could really use in England. 500 years ago.
Because all the others are just symbols of kind of the popery and the Catholics, and that's bad, and they don't want that anymore because England had become very Protestant, almost as Protestant as it ever would, apart from under Oliver Cromwell during Edward's very short reign. Okay. And so St. George's flag became...
Gosh, this guy who made this video really knows his stuff. Holy cow, do you have to be good at history to even try to tell this story.
The official flag, and the others were suppressed. Now, in 1606, 3 years after the union of England and Scotland together under James I of England, and I think the 6th of Scotland, they actually melded together the St. George's flag as well as St. Andrew's flag, which is the Scottish saltire, and together they formed this flag with superimposing the one above the other.
I'll tell you, in another video I did a while ago, it's the first time I had this epiphany where I learned that the Union Jack, the British flag, is actually a combination of flags put together. That was such an epiphany for me.
And this is, of course, the ancestor of the modern British flag, or the Union flag, as it's often called, which, flew over a large part of the world and has been incorporated into many, many flags because of, well...
Yes.
All right, everyone. So thank you very much.
Whoo! We did it. we did it. We made it to the end. Holy cow. I said going into this I wanted a history lesson. My God, did I get what I asked for. English history is crazy. In a good way. It's fascinating. It's long. It's old. So many kings and battles and saints and flags and visions that determined all this stuff. Actually, super interesting. And yeah, stuff we don't learn about. Definitely not in this level of detail we don't learn about here in America. So I just thought it'd be really cool to learn about this story. Again, this was a video by History with Hilbert. I gotta give it a like. That was so well done. Like, I tried to follow along as best I could, and he did a great job at making a complicated story as simple as possible, I think. So, yeah, this was fascinating to me. Anyway, if you enjoyed this as well, feel free to give this video a like, or leave a comment with your thoughts on this interesting history of the old English flag and how the modern English flag came to be. And if you're interested in more videos like this, me reacting to the UK and learning about the UK and history and culture and all that, feel free to subscribe for more. And until then, thanks for watching, and see you next time.